The doctor is in. Everybody, Wednesday night. Dr. Mo is in Switzerland on business and fun. And we have Dr. Vidal joining us. Yeah, he's here right now to talk to him. But we have a really hot topic. Let me just welcome Dr. Vidal. He just joined in. I'm glad he's here. So we have a doctor in the house. Hey, I'm so glad you're here. We just went live. So meet our friends. We literally just went live a second ago. So Dr. Vidal is going to sit in for Dr. Mo today and hopefully help me do this, have this interview with these wonderful people who are working on the triple negative breast cancer vaccine. And
sounds great.
Yeah, I don't know what kind. I mean, I don't know if we've ever had a vaccine before, so I don't know a lot about it. But just my friend Judy has been talking about it a lot and trying to recruit some people for the trial. And we have Judy here, who's been like a superhero trying to support the trial. We have Jenny here, who was the first trial participant, actually got the vaccine. And we have Justin, who's been working on the vaccine for how many years?
I've been working on a vaccine for about 15 years.
Wow. So that's how long it takes to get a drug to a market. So you guys, we have a lot of inquisitive people about this. A lot of because the recurrence rate for TNBC is so high. I mean, mine came back, right? That if I could have taken something to stop it, I would have. You know what I mean? And so we have so many young women getting TNBC. 40% of TNBC patients are under 40. And so if they get early stage, they would want to be interested in this. So we have so much interest around this. And so we're glad you're here. And I think we should just start with some background. You guys, I don't know who wants to start first and kind of tell the story of how this came about. When did you start developing? What is it? And I think the biggest question people are like, when can I take it? When can I have it? Or can I participate in the trial? So, yeah. So I don't know. Who wants to start? And Dr. Vidal is our superhero. I called him yesterday in a like panic. Dr. Mo's away. I need your help. I need an oncologist. So he's my superhero.
And I'm here. I'm going to try.
I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So Judy, you want to start and introduce people, or what do you think, babe?
Sure. So I'm Judy Fitzgerald, and about 14 years ago, after I had completed treatment for bilateral breast cancer, I was not triple negative, but I was HR positive, HER2 negative. And I was Googling how to prevent my own recurrence and reading everything I could find on how to do that. And I came across a video of Justin's mentor, Dr. Vincent Tuohy, who at the Cleveland Clinic had just presented to Congress that he had a vaccine which targeted a protein called alpha-lactalbumin, which particularly triple negative breast cancer cells, express, and he didn't have any funding. And so I watched the video and I was like, this is crazy. I have to call. So I called his office and I left a message, and he called me back the next day and he said, yeah, it's here, it's sitting on a shelf, and I can't get the funding to test it in humans. And I was like, can I come visit? And so my husband and I went out there and met Dr. Tuohy, and it was love at first sight. And for 14 years, we lobbied Congress, we did fundraisers, we basically tried everything we could, because Dr. Tuohy's lab is part of the Lerner Research Institute, which is a nonprofit. And so he had to raise all the money to run his own lab. And so it was a lot of ups and downs, and a lot of no's. And finally, 5 years ago, we got a grant from the Department of Defense to humanize the mouse vaccine. And it took until 2 years ago to start the trial. And it was so many times we thought that day would never come. And I'm just so excited to see Jenny here. And we still have a long way to go, because we still need phase 2, and we are not funded by pharma. We're funded by a grant from the Department of Defense, which allows no extra money for anything. And so the vaccine is actually patented by Anixa Bioscience, but they are now looking for the funding for the vaccine. So I'm going to turn over to Justin to give you the nuts and bolts of how the vaccine works.
Sure. Thank you, Judy. That was a really good summary. And you had the science nailed. And I just want to echo what Judy said. All of this work really originated by my mentor, Dr. Vincent Tui, who passed away. Believe it or not, it'll be a year tomorrow. So it's a kind of a sad anniversary, but we're also very excited that even though he has passed, we're still carrying the torch and we're still keeping this project going, and it's going very well. And Dr. Tui would be very, very happy to know that. I came to Dr. Tui as a summer student, believe it or not, 31 years ago, and I never left his lab. We worked on a lot of things, uh, multiple sclerosis and autoimmune hearing loss and autoimmune infertility. And along the way, Dr. Tui had this big aha moment that you could vaccinate a person to what he called a retired protein. So these are proteins that we stop making with age. So that could be the pigment in your hair, it could be ovarian follicles in the ovaries. And so because our bodies no longer need these proteins, they don't make them anymore. But what we found was that many tumors will make these proteins. They turn on these genes that are dormant because all of their signals get crossed. And so he realized that we could take this protein called alpha-lactalbumin. It's in human milk, it's in cow's milk, it's harmless. But if you inject it in the skin in such a way that it alerts the immune system, then you can get immunity against alpha-lactalbumin. And in a woman that's not lactating, for example, a woman who's no longer having children or doesn't have children, there's no risk of lactation, so there's no risk of harm to the normal healthy tissues. But if that woman begins to express cancer cells, the immune system is there to detect those cells, and it sees the alpha-lactalbumin and says, aha, this is something bad and it needs to be attacked, where normally it wouldn't. So that's the design of the vaccine. And Dr. Tui felt that we could not only target breast cancer with this vaccine, but potentially other cancers like ovarian cancer, prostate cancer, lung and colon cancer. And these are areas of exploration that we're doing now in the lab. But we think that this particular vaccine that's in phase 1 clinical trials at Cleveland Clinic has the potential to be very effective against specifically triple negative breast cancer, which, as you know, is very aggressive and disproportionately affects Black women. So we're in phase 1, and that means we're looking just to establish safety and establish the best dose of the vaccine to then carry on to phase 2. But that's where we're
Justin, do you
at.
mind if I ask you a few questions?
Sure, absolutely.
So alpha-lactalbumin it's a relatively ubiquitous protein, isn't it?
No, it's actually confined just to the mammary gland and only during lactation. And that's why Dr. Tui thought it would be a great target. As you probably know, there's other vaccines that are being developed, and some of them are in clinical trials that do target ubiquitous proteins like HER2, for example.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is you run the risk of getting an attack against healthy tissue that expresses those targets.
Do you know off your head the differential expression in normal versus cancerous cells and also triple negative? Why specifically triple negative?
Well, that's a great question. We didn't intuitively know that triple negative would express alpha-lactalbumin so robustly. But Dr. Tui did some searching of databases in the literature and discovered that it is overexpressed in triple negative breast cancer. And we don't know exactly why, but we think it has to do with hormonal control, that the loss of the receptors in triple negative breast cancer allows alpha-lactalbumin to be expressed when it normally wouldn't be.
Okay. And my third follow-up question is that So in normal breast cells, this is not expressed?
Correct.
Because I don't know very much about that protein.
Yeah.
So it's not
So
an
in a
area.
normal healthy mammary tissue does not express alpha-lactalbumin except during lactation. So our vaccine would not be recommended for someone who is breastfeeding or plans to breastfeed.
Okay. But if
So-
somebody has issues with hormonal imbalances like extra prolactin,
Mhm.
that causes them to produce those proteins, then we could have an issue with production in a normal person.
That's exactly right. And actually, one of the exclusion criteria for our trial is if you're taking a medication that can induce lactation, you cannot be in our trial because of that risk.
Thank you.
So how does it actually work? So if it's a vaccine, it's designed to prevent recurrence, or is it defined, or can you take it if you have BRCA and you're more likely to get triple negative? Like, who can take this? Like, what's it for? What's it going to work on?
Yeah, that's another great question. So Dr. Tui envisioned this to be just like the vaccines we get against diseases that, you don't wait to get measles to get a vaccine for it. You get the vaccine to protect you from getting it. And so we believe that women that are not no longer having children, but are at high risk for breast cancer, for example, like you mentioned, having a BRCA mutation or other genetic risk, would be ideal candidates. We think, we're still establishing safety, but we think and we hope that any woman who does not plan to get pregnant or lactate can and should get the disease if they're worried about their risk. But essentially, it'll work just like all of those other vaccines. You train your immune system to recognize this target, which it has never yet seen. But when it does see that target in a cancer cell, then it's ready to attack and hopefully destroy those cells before they start to divide.
So
So
who are,
go ahead.
sorry,
No, you go.
follow up. Who is currently being recruited for this study? What's your patient population?
Yeah, so we actually have three patient populations. So the one I was describing that Dr. Tui envisioned for prevention purposes, we are currently studying in one arm of the trial. These are women that have genetic risk. They've already decided to come to Cleveland Clinic and get a risk-reducing mastectomy to because they're so concerned that they will develop breast cancer in the future. And so we will be vaccinating these other, healthy women who are going to have their mammary glands removed shortly after we immunize them. And we're going to look at the safety profile and the dosing profile, and also look at the mammary tissue that's been removed to make sure it's safe. But the biggest arm of the trial is what we call the triple negative breast cancer arm, where we are immunizing women who have already had triple negative breast cancer. They have completed their treatment, but they are at high risk of recurrence. So while they're in remission, we recruit them to the trial, we immunize them. And again, we're looking for safety and to optimize dose, but we're also looking at their immune response on a cellular level to see if their body is being trained to recognize alpha-lactalbumin. And the good news is we've got some data back on these women, and about 3/4 of the women have demonstrated an immune response to the vaccine. So we don't know in the long run if that means that they're going to be protected from breast cancer, but it's a really good early sign. And then the third arm is the same as the one I just described, but these are women who have, as part of their treatment, received pembrolizumab, also known as Keytruda, which is now very common in these cases. And we're studying these as a separate population to see how our vaccine will work in women that have received pembro.
Well, when we started the trial, Pembro wasn't around, right, Justin?
Right.
So
Right.
I'm one of the three advocates that go to the trial meetings. And just to piggyback off what Justin said is when I first met Dr. Tui, his ambition was primary prevention, like Justin said, stopping the disease before it had a chance to get started. And this triple negative arm sort of came along as a gift, really, because the longer we didn't start the trial, the more research was being done. And this is actually, correct me, Justin, if I'm wrong, but it's a faster way to prove that it works, right? Because the challenge was always, how do you prove primary prevention? So,
Exactly.
right.
Yeah. And
So,
there were two challenges.
you
So
know,
one is if we're immunizing healthy women, you'd have to wait a really long time, maybe 20 years to get any results. And also, because it's a phase 1 trial and we haven't established safety yet, it really wouldn't be ethical to immunize a lot of women with an unknown drug that are otherwise completely healthy. So as Judy mentioned, Dr. Tui and our colleague on the clinical side, Dr. Tom Budd at Cleveland Clinic, designed the trial this way. And it's really ingenious. And we hope, this is going to give us a lot of information about the promise of this vaccine.
And I'm going to have continuously have follow-up questions if you don't
Yes,
mind.
please.
All right. So I think the idea behind the vaccine is a great one. I do want to make sure that we're targeting the right sort of population when we design the study. So your first population is a population that have high risk for breast cancer, but you're reducing their risk by having mastectomies. So their risk go from 80% to 2%.
Mm-hmm.
Why then do they need to be vaccinated?
Well, it's a good point. And we're not in phase 1, we're not looking for efficacy. We're not looking to see if these women have recurrence as part of the trial. We will be tracking them to determine that, but that's not our primary goal here. Our primary goal is to establish safety. And one of the ways that we do that is we need to look at the mammary tissue and make sure that nothing bad is happening there that we wouldn't have anticipated.
So if I could cut you off, you're actually vaccinating those patients before they have their surgery so you can evaluate the tissue. So it's
Correct.
mainly you're trying to get breast tissue so you could look at it in the laboratory, and that population who's already going to have their mastectomy, you can have their tissue. Okay,
Correct.
so I get that population.
So then,
Yeah.
so then you don't, because I get your question, Dr. Gregory, in like, if you're going to get a mastectomy, because my daughter Amanda is about to get a mastectomy, a prophylactic mastectomy,
Mhm.
and so I would say, why would you need the shot if you're doing that, right?
Well,
Now I get.
the hope is that they won't need. The hope is that they won't need to get the prophylactic mastectomy if we can prove the vaccine works.
Yeah.
Right. So
in the future.
Yeah.
Right.
But as Dr. Vidal pointed out, unfortunately, I mean, a risk-reducing mastectomy is not a guarantee. It's risk-reducing, but there's still a risk.
Yeah.
And so what we hope is that if our vaccine works for the women that are in that arm of the trial, it will further reduce their risk of having a recurrence.
Right.
And that's why women are signing up for the trial. We have 2 women in the trial now, because they know that they want to do everything they can to make sure that they're not going to get breast cancer, even though they've had a prophylactic mastectomy. But as Judy pointed out, our vision is if this vaccine works, this will be an alternative. So a woman can go to her doctor and say, I have BRCA1, and you can have a mastectomy, or you can get this vaccine.
Yeah, that's great. Why don't we hear from Jenny? Because Jenny did it.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Jenny. Jenny is our first patient, but could I just say one thing though? That one of the things that we're hoping for is diversity in this trial. And that's why I contacted Ricky, because obviously we want to make sure that we are testing it on the populations that could benefit the most.
Yeah.
So I'll let Justin put a plug in later, but Jenny is our first amazing patient, so she can tell you what it was like.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be picked to do this. I went through standard of care for triple negative chemotherapy, double mastectomy, 26 rounds of radiation. Followed, with a wonderful team from Cleveland Clinic, and my nurse practitioner had said to me that this, they had been studying this in the lab at Cleveland, but it just wasn't quite ready for the human phase after I had finished up treatment. So it was something that I asked about often. It was something I was very curious about. Recurrence for triple negative, as you all know, is extremely high. So it weighed on my mind daily. And the day that I walked into the clinic and they said that it was ready, I was beyond grateful. I have 3 kids, my husband, my mom. I think we all were very excited about it. It wasn't something that I was fearful of at all, especially, I didn't know much about it. When I was diagnosed, I learned really quickly to stay off the internet and just trust in my team. And that kind of still goes to this day. I'm a nurse, but oncology was not my specialty. And looked it up very briefly. And then I honestly just chose not to do that again. So I was not, and Judy, I wish I was kind of more like you. Like I would have, looking for different things and doing all kinds of research. And I really, that amazes me about you. But I personally was not able to do it. I just couldn't. So I went with my team and they kind of kept me in the loop. But finding out, how long Dr. Tui had studied this and, the amazing things that they did to get it funded, Judy, and, there's another group of women that really lobbied for this and made it happen. And I really feel like that I owe them my life. And it came down to some criteria for me to get in the trial, which was, no signs of recurrence, and had to be less than 3 years out from my first chemotherapy treatment. So once all that was I'm sorry?
I didn't interrupt you, but how old were you when you got breast cancer? When you got triple-
41.
41.
Mhm.
And then you did this at like 43?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How old are your kids, if you don't mind?
I'm sorry.
How old is your youngest kid?
My youngest is 21. They were all in
Oh.
high school when this happened.
Yeah.
So
How
yeah.
was the experience with the drug? Can you tell us about your side effects and
Yeah.
how well do you tolerate it?
Yeah. So the vaccine is a 3-dose series, given 1 dose every 2 weeks. And the only side effect that I had was irritation at the injection site, which is no different than, the flu vaccine or any other vaccine that I've ever gotten. But I had no other side effects. And to this day, I still have nothing.
Wow. So
Great.
I'm just looking up the data. So first of all, Black women get triple negative at 3 times the rate of white women. So that's why we really want to talk to Black women about this thing. But 40% of people, so we don't know whether all women with stage 1 to 3 triple negative will get a recurrence, which is crazy, right? That's crazy information. And 40% of triple negative patients are under 40. So this is like young women like you, Jenny, with the young kids. Like my daughter has 3 daughters, 2, 4, and 6. So we need this. We need this drug. We need this therapy to help our young women, to help everybody. But I mean, so where are we? So we have Jenny, and how many more people have been in the trial, and like, when can we get it? Like,
Yeah.
how can people get involved in the trial?
Well, right now we have immunized a total of 20 women, including Jenny. We have 2 of those women are in that arm for the prevention where they're getting mastectomies. One of those women is in the Pembro cohort. But if we look at all 20 of them, demographically, the majority are white women. We only have 2 Black women enrolled in the trial currently, and we need to do better. And that's one of the reasons our team, reached out to you, because we want to get the word out that we really want to improve diversity in the trial. We really need to represent the actual patient population, and the population that can benefit from this vaccine. So we're just trying to get the word out as much as we can.
Right. And so far, nobody's had a recurrence or nobody's gotten cancer after the shot, right? Or after the
Well,
second.
right now we're not looking at recurrence. That will be in phase 2, but we will be tracking these women more informally to see how they fare with time.
Okay.
I haven't.
Yeah.
Good. That's good to know.
Can I ask you a little bit about your vaccine technology? How was it
Mhm.
created? Is it more old-time vaccine technology? Is it more mRNA, more updated technology?
It's an old school vaccine. It's just a protein vaccine, alpha-lactalbumin. What's new about it is that we had to come up with a brand new adjuvant. And for the non-immunologists in the audience, the adjuvant is something that is often included in a vaccine and could be, a standard vaccine against diseases that just helps rev up the immune system. And what we needed to rev up the immune system in a very particular way that all of the other adjuvants that are currently approved by the FDA did not do. So we spent a few years evaluating alternatives. And what we came up with was something brand new. It's actually been around for a long time. It's called Zymosan, and it's an extract of baker's yeast. So it's a harmless substance. You could eat it and be okay, and your immune system would ignore it for most people. But the immune system is really good at picking up on things that are dangerous. And sometimes a thing is dangerous because of where it is and not necessarily what it is. So when you put Zymosan or any kind of yeast extract under the skin, your immune system gets alerted right away and says something's wrong here. And that's the trick. So that's how we get the immune system to come in and say, well, this harmless protein from milk, alpha-lactalbumin, maybe it's dangerous because it's mixed in with this yeast extract that also shouldn't be under the skin. And the immune system gets revved up. And this is brand new. This is the first time in a clinical trial that Zymosan has been used as the adjuvant or the booster to rev up the immune system. And so far, the immune data looks really good. We're getting some good immune responses specifically to our target, alpha-lactalbumin, which is really exciting.
Thank you.
Well,
Um,
also, sorry,
go ahead.
triple negative breast cancer patients. Sorry, excuse me, Dr. Vidal, I'm sorry. The one thing that is hopeful as well is triple negative breast cancer. If you pass 5 years, you have a better prognosis actually than HR positive
Right.
breast cancer. So, the trial will help us too. Like our dear girl here, Jenny, she's just passed 5 years. Is that right, Jenny?
Mhm.
You passed 5 years since you were
I did.
diagnosed.
Mhm.
So that's a pretty big milestone, as well. But we're just really hopeful that this is going to be something that will be available for everyone's
Right. And make a difference.
10 years. I don't know. They tell me 10 years, that really scares me. We've got to move faster than that.
10
Why
years
10
for what?
years?
Sorry,
Yeah.
can you clarify? 10 years? They tell you 10 years for what? Sorry.
Well, to go through the whole process, am I wrong, Justin?
Well, it's hard to predict. We're going to try to finish up phase 1 by the end of this year. And if we can do that and we're successful and we've shown that it's safe and that we've got an optimal dose that has a chance of working, then we're on to phase 2. And phase 2 is being supported as Judy mentioned by our commercial partners, Anixa Biosciences. It's a small biotech company. They don't have the resources like Pfizer would have, and that's why we can't unfortunately directly offer patient support. But if their timetable is accurate and everything goes on schedule, it would probably be 5 or 6 years before we get through phase 2 and 3, and then maybe a couple of years before it's on the market. And that's if if it's shown to be effective and continues to be safe through all of our clinical trials. So 10 years is, we're hoping it'll be less than 10 years, but we usually don't want to overpromise. So we say we hope within 10 years.
Well,
Traditionally,
oh, go ahead.
no, traditionally, these things have taken a while, but the FDA have had put some mechanism in place for sort of rapid approval for drugs that have promise. So there's some hope if that drug is showing promise in early studies.
Yeah, let's see, we're gonna ramp this up. So if you're in phase 1, like for the next year, that's a long time. By the end of the year, it's still a long time from now. Like, do you need more people? Like, what's gonna make it go faster? Anything? Do you just need more people?
Yeah, I mean, there's a limit to how fast it can go, because we have to immunize patients one at a time. But there is something that we can do, and that is make sure that we have a steady pipeline of volunteers to enroll in our trial. That's the one thing that has slowed us down the most, was especially early on. Recruitment wasn't so great across the board. Now that the clinical trial has been covered in the news and we've gotten the word out, we've gotten some publicity, we've talked to a lot of advocate groups, we've talked to organizations like Touch, and done interviews and talked directly to their followers. We're getting more interest in the trial, and the numbers have really picked up, really, especially since SABCS in December when we presented the data at that scientific conference.
Yeah. So somebody's asking in the chat, must you live near the Cleveland Clinic in order to enroll in the trial?
That's a great question. No, you don't, but you have to be willing to travel to the Cleveland Clinic for the treatments and follow-ups. So there would be a consent and screening visit. There would be 3 visits where you get immunizations. Those are 2 weeks apart. And then there's a follow-up 56 days after the first immunization and 184 days after the first immunization. So maybe Jenny can speak to the patient experience for, following the design of the trial.
Jenny, can I ask this question while you're answering this? How long is the observation? Is there an observation period after immunization? Is this mainly outpatient or does it require inpatient?
No, definitely outpatient, just a regular visit. They did monitor my vital signs for an hour after receiving each dose, and lab work was done prior to each dose, and then the 2 follow-up visits. And then after that, there was no follow-up required.
Okay. I forgot to ask, did you have a mastectomy or do you have a
I
breast?
did.
Bilateral?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. In your first, when you were sick, when you had cancer, you had a mastectomy before the.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Cancer treatment.
Prior
Yes.
to the immunization, you're saying. Okay.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I went through all standard of care.
Justin, as a follow-up to that, the other patients in the trial, does any of them have breast in place? And are there any adverse events, such as breast tenderness, that those particular patients are experiencing?
That's a great question. Unfortunately, I don't have that information. That would be with our clinical partner, Dr. Budd, who unfortunately couldn't join us today due to a conflict.
Appreciate that.
We
Thanks.
can maybe try to get that information and we can publish.
Jenny has an implant, right, Jenny? Have you had any, you had an implant?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any issues with your implant?
No issues at all. Like I said, the only side effect I had was the irritation at the site of the injection site.
Mhm. Wow. All right, so I'm trying to speed up this process. So so we got till the end of the year for phase one. And then
Yes.
Or you're trying to speed up the process of getting it to
yeah,
patients?
call
I
somebody at
thought
the
we were talking about
FDA.
this discussion.
No, I'm gonna call somebody at the FDA. Are you kidding? You know, I'm a pain in the ass to everybody, so I'm gonna try to be a pain in the ass here. So phase two, what happens in phase two? You have three
Well,
of a study. So it's really about getting more patients into phase one, right?
right. So what you can do right now, and again, this is why we like to talk to groups like yours, is we want to make that connection with people that would like to get into the trial. And that's the one thing that we can do to speed it up. There's really nothing else, but that's a very powerful thing that your followers could do is consider getting in the trial if you think you qualify.
So who should they call? I'm gonna put it in the.
So if you want to review the requirements for the trial, unfortunately, it's really difficult to find. But if you go to clinicaltrials.gov, there you can find all of the clinical trials that are currently ongoing in the United States. And you would have to do a pretty deep search to find our page with all the criteria. But if you type in alpha-lactalbumin, you may be able to find it. If you want to just fast track and talk to somebody at the Cleveland Clinic and then determine if you would be eligible, the best way is to call the Cancer Answer line. And I can give you that phone number.
Okay, let's do that one. So we don't like clinicaltrials.gov. It is like going to hell blindfolded with your hands. So we
I
actually have a portal for trials on our website, whenwetrial.org. And if you click search trials, people can go in there and search for the trial and probably get, and we'll collect information. But I think probably the best thing is to call, or they can call me and we can refer them. But let's try to make it easier than going to clinicaltrials.org and trying to spell that word that you said, because that's
Yeah.
So
Well,
you can also go, sorry, if you go to Cleveland Clinic and do a Google search, Cleveland Clinic clinical trials, you will see a link towards all of their clinical trial that will take you to a place where you can actually find the trial by just either searching breast cancer or searching the term that was just mentioned.
It's also posted on my website, sistersforprevention.com. The very bottom of the homepage, there's something that says Cleveland Clinic. And there's also a link there to all the vaccine information about the trial. One thing I wanted to say, though, is yes, we have till the end of the year, but this is kind of a bit time critical because we have to screen the patients and they have to get the vaccine. And so Justin, right, we're thinking spring would be something where we really need to be kind of wrapping this up a little bit. So it is time critical that we reach people. Just correct me if I'm.
Are you looking for a particular number, or are you just trying to find maximal tolerated dose? Is that what we're trying to find?
Yeah, we have established a maximum tolerated dose, but now we're
Okay.
looking for intermediate doses, which might be better as far as the immune system's concerned. So we're really looking for the optimal immune dose right now.
And are you doing that in a 3x3 design, or you're just enrolling patients? Are you looking for a particular number of patients? And how much is that you need to get to move to phase 2?
You're correct. It is a 3+3 design. But we'd like to have a continuous pipeline of people ready to enter these dose levels as they become available. So, we have to kind of predict what might happen, but I think we probably would like to see, it probably 6 to 12 more patients for the TNBC arm. We would like to get as many patients as we can for the prevention arm, because we only have 2 currently. We would like to get at least 4 more if we can. And these are the women that are already have made the decision to get a mastectomy, and that would have to be at Cleveland Clinic to qualify. And then we probably need, another 6 to 10 patients that have had TNBC and have been treated with Pembro.
And also
Teacher-
diversity. We also really, as we know, breast cancer is a very heterogeneous disease. And so we really want to get diversity in the trial.
Absolutely, Judy. You know, we're really making an appeal directly to anybody that's watching this right now. If you think that you may qualify and you'd like to get in the trial, I think the best way, we've talked about a lot of ways you could potentially get in, but if you call the cancer answer line, and we'll, you know, maybe Ricky can post this number as well, but it's 1
One
8
second, 1 second.
Okay.
I'm typing in the ones you gave me already. Okay.
Okay.
Cancer
One.
answer line.
1-866-223-8100. And if you tell them that you're interested in getting in the breast cancer vaccine trial, they'll put you in touch with the right person.
So that will take them to Cleveland Clinic.
Yes, this is the Cleveland Clinic Cancer Answer Line. And the Cancer Answer Line is used for cancer patients in general. So you have to be specific and say, I'm interested in joining potentially getting in the breast cancer vaccine trial, and they will connect you to the right person. And then they will ask you some questions about, you know, your medical history. And if they think you qualify, then you would come in and talk to a person who would then present you consent. And that would mean that they would talk all about the trial and the risks and explain exactly what's going to happen. And you can decide from there whether or not you want to be in the trial. If you do decide to consent to being in the trial, the next thing would be they do a health screen. One of the things that they would be looking for is to see if you have any residual disease. If you do, you may not qualify for the trial.
I was going to say, what makes you not qualify? The disease could make you not qualify.
Yeah, or if you're on medications that are on the prohibited list, for example, one we discussed earlier, a medication with a side effect that might cause lactation. But there's a long list of inclusion and exclusion criteria that would be reviewed with the patient at that time.
Okay. All right, we have a couple of questions here. Okay. One of them is, what stage was Jenny when she was diagnosed with TNBC the first time? What stage were you?
2B.
2B. Okay.
And 2B is lymph node involved or not?
No.
Okay, so it was just a large tumor. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Is the trial only enrolling stage 1 to 3 triple negative? So you can't be, can you be metastatic?
So that's a great question. I was just thinking about that from Dr. Vidal's question. So you have to be stage 2 or 3.
So because remember, he said you cannot have residual disease. If you're
Right.
stage 4, it means you have active disease, and I'm assuming that would be an exclusion.
Correct.
Yeah, I know we don't have anything for metastatic yet. Hang in there, girls, ladies, you know. Okay.
We're working on it.
I know you're working on it. Dr. Vidal's doing all kinds of great trials in his center in Memphis. So that's a whole nother conversation. We need to have a show about that, Dr. Vidal, soon. Okay. And then does a patient have to have neoadjuvant therapy before getting the vaccine? Well, it could be any therapy, right?
Yeah, so patients should have already completed their standard of care treatment.
Okay. Completed treatment and be no evidence of disease, right?
Correct.
Okay. I had a bilateral mastectomy, and today I only have 1 implant in the non-diseased breast. Am I eligible? Do you have to have had a double mastectomy then?
No, so I don't see why not, but that person should contact the Cleveland Clinic, and they'll go through the screening process and let them know if it's exclusion criteria or not.
Okay, great.
I'm sorry, can you say that again? Her question?
So she had unilateral mastectomy with an implant reconstruction. And she was
Gotcha. Okay.
asking whether or not that would be an exclusion.
Yeah, so I'm just telling her that. Wow, okay, lots of questions here, but I mean, that's showing you the interest. I mean, it's a nasty disease. And I'm getting a lot of stories here too in our comments from women who just died very young,
Mhm.
mothers talking about, I wish my daughter had this. And so we're sorry for those horrible stories that we see every day with this nasty disease, so the more we can do, the faster we can do this, the better off.
Yeah, and I do want to stress the importance of patients of color participating on trials like this and other trials,
Right.
because again, representation matters. The only way we're going to know whether or not the particular drug that, if approved, is effective in a patient like yourself, is tolerated well in a patient like yourself, is for us to participate on studies.
Yeah.
We use too many of drugs that have not been studied in patients of color.
Yeah.
And we all use them because we have the disease, and we
Right.
need to have a better understanding of how these drugs behave in patients like yourself, and not just color, but women, men,
Right.
old,
LGBTQ.
young.
Yeah.
Yes.
Whatever your situation is. And Dr. Vidal, can I put your email address in the comments for people, or I'll just have them call me and I'll
Sure.
you, because you're doing amazing work in Memphis,
I think I gave you
Can't you
permission
guys-
the last time. Sure.
Okay. I know you'll get bombarded, but any chance you guys could give some vaccines to Dr. Vidal to use in Memphis? Does it have to be in Cleveland Clinic?
It is not that easy
I-
to open the trial in different places. Funding is one issue for sure, and then there is a lot that has to go through regulatory and all of the stuff
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
we can
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah, certainly for phase 2.
Right.
Phase 1, there's just one site. It's Cleveland Clinic. You have to come to Cleveland Clinic one way or another to get the vaccine. But for phase 2, it's still in the planning stages, but it will be multi-site, hopefully spread out across the country to be as inclusive as possible.
Great. And you think that's going to happen maybe early next year?
Well, I think that, actually opening the trial to recruiting patients is further away than that.
Okay.
I would say probably late 2024 or early 2025. There's a lot of things that have to happen. As Dr. Vidal mentioned, approval by the FDA, funding is a big one.
Yeah.
It's a very expensive thing to do a phase 2 trial.
Yes.
And we're just a small research lab. And Anixa, our partners, they're, a smaller biotech company. So we are looking for grants currently with the United States government and other sources to try to fund this, because we really want to, we're not going to give up. We're going to push like we did for phase 1, and we're going to make sure that this happens. And we're going to try to bring it to you as quickly as we can.
No, we appreciate that.
Well, Jenny's been an amazing ambassador too, and she's really been very helpful in spreading the word about this. And do you have any advice for women, Jenny, that may be considering being in the trial?
I think that trials are so important because it's how we advance medicine. And, the more people that get involved, the faster it will move along. And then the ultimate hope is, for it to get through these trials and these phases, to become available to the public. And I just think it's so important. And there's so much hope that I have for this vaccine. And I'm so
I was
thankful.
gonna say, how do you
Judy and
feel? Do you
Justin.
feel like you have an armor? Like, how do you feel? Do you feel more confident?
I feel extremely confident. Um, I'm the patient, so I can say, how confident I am and how blessed I am and how I'm so hopeful. I'm so hopeful that, everything will continue the way that Dr. Tui and Justin, hope and think that this vaccine will. And, I thank Judy for everything she's done it's such a huge team behind the scenes that have made this happen. And I'm just the lucky one that got to participate. So my outlook on life has completely shifted, and I don't worry about recurrence every day. You know, I worry about this calendar behind me. This is my big wall calendar. And so I worry about all the trips that I'm taking and all the fun things that I'm doing. So it's changed my life, and I'm more than grateful.
Yeah, you know,
I
I'm
wondered
12
what was that behind you.
I
That
like
it's not a work calendar.
It's not, oh no, this has nothing to do with work. This is my fun calendar.
I like it.
I love it. You tell us what the colors mean, but you know, I'm 12 years out, and even when I hit the 5-year mark, and my doc said, "Okay, Ricky, you can go now." I'm like, "No, no, no, not going anywhere." And he said, "Come back when you're symptomatic." I'm like, "What? What does that mean?" And I still go and beg to get my PET scans, and now I get them every other year, not every year, but it's still in the back of my mind. And you know, like it never goes away. You know, I look at my fake boobs every morning, you know, the ones that they're bigger than the ones that try to kill me, but they're still, I still look at them every day and I say, can it come back? Will it come back? You know, and that fear is always there, you know, it never goes away. And when somebody dies, I'm like, oh boy, is it going to be me? Like, it's something that, you know, just to not to have to think about it would be a great thing, But we have a couple more questions here. You said stage 2 or 3, so stage 1 people not eligible.
No, only 2 and 3.
Okay, and then someone said it has to be within 3 years of treatment, right? You said.
Correct.
Okay, so those are the 2 questions, but you know, we
And do you have a time between last chemotherapy and ability to enroll?
No, I mean, as soon as you complete your treatment, you're eligible.
okay.
Okay, as long as you can prove that you don't have recurrence. So I'm assuming
Yeah.
during screening, you'll have a CT scan and laboratory to prove that you're not you don't have residual disease. And then you can go on. Okay.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Great.
the fear of recurrence, everyone knows that feeling. And I always say that meeting Dr. Tui was my God incidence, because it wasn't a coincidence, because I was so afraid of recurrence that he gave me something positive, you know, to focus on and hope that if this disease could be prevented. I have 3 granddaughters that both grandmothers have had breast cancer, even though we don't have any genetic connection, but still drives them up pretty high in percentage. And so I want to say a big thank you to Justin too, because he has been just amazing with this trial, and, you know, with losing Dr. Tui. He has just been amazing. And so I'm just so grateful to this team, and I'm just so grateful that somehow I lucked into being part of this, and we have to make this happen. You know, Ricky, you've got granddaughters,
3
you've got 3
granddaughters, I have 2
granddaughters.
daughters, and Amanda's about to have her mastectomy. She actually had her MRI today to go to schedule her surgery, and she's 38 and has 3 babies, and we don't have any genetic mutations, but we have 3 generations. So for the arm for people who are high risk, like Amanda's, her risk assessment says 36% risk of getting breast cancer. Are you taking anybody for that yet? I mean, for, you know, kind of the BRCA people, or do you have to have BRCA? Could you just have family history?
Well, specifically, the trial is designed for people that have either a BRCA1 or BRCA2 mutation or PALB2. Those are the only 3 we're looking for right now.
Okay.
And so if you have any one of those gene mutations and you have a family history, you know, I mean, that means that, you know, you should be concerned about your risk, and maybe another reason to think about enrolling in the trial. But family history alone is not enough to get into that arm.
And, you know, that's the interesting thing for Black women, because I think I probably have a gene that we haven't identified yet. And, you know, we're working with Dr. Melissa Davis, and you know her, Dr. Greg, that, you know, she's identified this Duffy gene in West Africa. that could be attributing to triple negative breast cancer in Black women. And we're not testing for that right now. So I think for Black women, we just have such little data about our breast cancer that you should consider us, because there could be something that we don't know yet.
You're right. And that's what science is all about, is discovering what we don't know yet. And you're probably right, and time will tell.
Yeah.
But there's so much about the human genome we don't understand. There's so much about the human body we still don't understand, even in the 21st century. But we're learning.
Right.
But to your point, and to Dr. Vidal's point, we can't learn from just, a very narrow demographic. We need to represent everyone to really understand this disease. And so we really want to improve diversity in the trial. And, we hope that we can at least get through to some of your followers today to at least maybe consider it or make that phone call.
Great. And you guys, I put my, my email, everybody knows how to find me. Just call me and I'll help you connect with these guys and get it. But think about, so expand your mind a little bit about Black women, because we may not fit in the box because we don't know. So think about that, family history could play a bigger role. We are less likely to have BRCA, right, Dr. Greg? But we could have something that we don't know yet.
I mean, that is correct.
We're getting it at 3 times the rate, and your numbers should be commensurate with the burden of disease as much as you can, right? And I know that's why you're here. So, what are you going to say?
Yeah. But there has to be I think there is a scientific question being asked, and that's why it's narrow at this point. And later on, you would expand it to more and more patients.
Okay.
But I do think it's an important development. And hopefully we could have a successful vaccine.
Yeah.
But the prevention arm, Justin, you don't have to have the BRCA gene. So if you were a woman of color opting for prophylactic double mastectomy, they could also participate, couldn't they?
No, the way the trial is designed, you do have to have a gene mutation.
Okay, sorry.
That gives risk, in addition to having already made that decision for prophylactic mastectomy.
Okay.
But to Ricky's point, we may have not designed this trial in the most ideal way because there are so many unknowns. And hopefully, as we go through phase 1 and 2 and 3, we may learn some things. As you mentioned, Ricky, we might find out that, there's something else that we hadn't thought of. And, for phase 2, we can change our design to be more inclusive.
Great. Yeah, that's great. That's really great that you're open to that. So if you do want to have or willing to have a prophylactic mastectomy, do you have to have it at Cleveland Clinic with you guys, or?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's a limitation because it's a one-site trial, and we do require that if you are having that prophylactic mastectomy, you have to have it at Cleveland Clinic. If we have a prevention arm in phase 2, that may not be the case, but it is the case right now.
Assuming because that's how you get access to the tissue?
Correct.
For your correlative studies. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. This is a lot of stuff here and a lot of big words, you guys. So if you have questions, email me. And I can't even spell that other word you said, but the protein, but yeah. I can't even go there. So if I can't go there, ask us questions, email me and I'll try to get your questions answered, and let's check back in on this. All right.
Okay.
Let's do another show maybe in 6 months or so and see where you guys are, and keep me posted on how your recruiting goes. If you get people, and we'll try to help get the word out. We can do another e-blast. We can try to do an article on blackdoctor.org and keep us in the loop on how it's going. So, and we love to keep up with this. And Jenny, thank you so much for doing this, girlfriend.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I just put in the chat the spelling of the word for you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. You know, I'm like, yeah, what do I tell you? Talk to me like I'm a
So,
five.
so you can probably share it with your folks if they
I'll
wanted to
share
go
it.
for more.
Okay, I
study.
got it. I got it. All right, cool, cool, cool. Well, let me write it down before we go offline. So I won't lose it, so I can report that to people. Wow. Okay, cool. Thank you, Doc. So thanks, you guys. Thanks
All
for a
right,
great
thank
show.
you.
Thank you, Doc,
Thanks for the invite.
thanks for, helping me out here. You know, I love you dearly. And thanks, you
Right.
guys. Thanks, Judy like chased me down. Where was that? In Miami one time. You have to talk to me right now. So thank you for being persistent, and we'll continue.
Sorry.
Continue this conversation. March is TNBC month, so I'm going to try to get an article posted on Black Doctor for March. So I'll call you back to get more info.
All
Okay.
right, guys.
Awesome. Thank you, Ricky.
Thank
So
you.
much.
Bless
All right,
night.
bye.
Take care. Breasty love.
Good night,
my
everybody.
Breasty.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Thanks all. Bye. Thanks to our sponsors. Thanks to Black Doctor.